what might backfire is his intelligence team, his security team. Are they the best team in place to deal with the multiple extremism threats that the US is facing right now? And that is a big, big question.
Well, let's go to the United States, where a judge has ordered the sentencing of Donald Trump in his hush money case. In a surprise move, the sentencing has been set for January the 10th, little more than a week before the president-elect's inauguration. It's on the same day that Trump's pick for US House Speaker Mike Johnson was re-elected with a razor-thin majority. Charlotte McDonald Gibson is a US correspondent for The Times and joins me now. Hello again, Charlotte.
Hi there.
Hi. Let's talk first of all about this judge ordering the sentence of Donald Trump for the hush money case. And it's going to be a week today. How surprising is that?
Yeah, it's another day in US politics and another surprise. Yes, to have an incoming president being sentenced just a week before his inauguration, well, it's unprecedented. In terms of what it really means for him, I mean, the idea, what we're hearing is that the judge is going to recommend a conditional discharge. And this means that there's going to be no jail time, no probation, and no fine. But symbolically, Trump will be entering the White House as the first convicted felon acting as US president. So symbolically, it's not a great look for him, although, of course, he plays it to his advantage, as he always does, and his spokesperson has already put out a statement calling it part of the witch hunt. So, who knows, with him, it could remain, a plus for him. He manages to switch these things around.
He certainly does, Charlotte. I'm wondering what was on the judge's mind in terms of the timing and the range of options he had before him, given that we've not seen this before.
Yes, well, Trump's lawyers were arguing that the conviction should have been overturned based on the fact that he was coming in as president and also these previous immunity rulings. So that had been ruled out already. His other option was putting off the sentencing till Trump leaves the White House. But that's obviously quite far down the line. So those were the options available to him. And of course, there is the option of jail time. But I think no one really thought that was going to be a possibility. And we won't know for sure until the actual sentencing on January 10th. But, so he's sort of taken the middle road there, I would say.
Yeah. And in better news for Donald Trump, his pick for US House Speaker, I say pick, he was already the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. He was re-elected on the second time of asking with a very, very narrow majority. Now, what went on behind the scenes there, do you think?
Yeah, it was quite dramatic to watch. So we had the first round of voting, and in the first round of voting, 3 Republicans, so they have a razor-thin majority. They have 219 in the House. There's 215 Democrats. So he couldn't lose any more than one of the Republican votes to secure that 218 majority. He lost 3 in the first round of voting. Now, we knew for sure that there was one Republican, Representative Massey, who was absolutely not going to vote for him. He'd been absolutely clear on that. But it wasn't clear. There were up to a dozen other Republicans who were sort of, sitting on the fence about it. But what happened in the end was 3 voted against him, and that wouldn't have given him the majority. And usually that would then go to a second vote, but it didn't happen this time. The gavel didn't go down, and instead there were these extraordinary scenes of sort of horse trading taking place on the floor of the House. And eventually Johnson and 2 of the Republicans who voted against him, they left the chamber. Then they returned, and these 2 approached the desk and changed their vote and changed it for Johnson. So he did actually secure it on the first round, which, a lot of us didn't think was going to happen.
And if you consider the circumstances in which Kevin McCarthy, the former Speaker, was removed and Johnson was elected, you wonder how much room for manoeuvre he might have before the hard right say, you're not right-wing enough.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's, as you said, that's exactly what happened with McCarthy. He was elected in January 2023, and that was 15 rounds of voting.
Yes.
And then he was tossed out by his colleagues in October the same year. And we know that Johnson has, he has many of his the hardline conservatives in the Republican Party with the deals he struck, the compromises he's made with the Democrat Party. Although that is the very nature of Congress, but the hardline conservatives think he's gone too far. And they were making that point today. That's the point they were trying to make. And with this razor thin majority, it's a point they're going to continue to make. So his job it's not going to be an easy one.
Right. And so what is he going to do, or what is he going to have to do in order to maintain that caucus of support? I mean, he's saying some very bombastic things like, dealing with the what was it called? The administrative tyranny of the fourth branch of government. What's that going to mean in practice, do you think?
Well, I mean, the one thing he has to do is keep Trump on side. I mean, that's the key thing he has to do. And we saw that just before Christmas, we almost had a government shutdown because he'd failed to get the end of year spending plans through the House twice. And Trump had been quite clear on the second vote that he wanted Johnson to push through his measures, and Johnson had failed to do that. And then we didn't have Trump coming out and supporting Johnson for quite a few days afterwards. So it was like, he wasn't coming out with a full throttle endorsement as quickly as I'm sure Johnson would have hoped. So I think that's going to be his number one priority, because having won the election so convincingly, I mean, Trump, he does have the backing of the Republican Party now. So I think that will be top of his agenda. But I think the big reason why we had so much dissent from the Republicans was on fiscal measures, really. It was on spending plans. So I think he's going to have to do a lot of work convincing Republicans why compromise needs to be made, and working out where the compromise needs to be, and where, he can just barrel through with the sort of MAGA agenda that he very clearly laid out in his speech after he was finally elected.
Yeah. Now I'm just wondering about the status of Joe Biden, because a lot of people might be thinking he's no longer in office, but he is. I mean, he's still president until about the 20th of January. Are people paying any attention to him anymore?
Yes, in a way, they're sort of paying attention in that they're sort of saying, well, what's he up to? Is he sort of quiet quitting? Why are we not hearing so much from President Biden? But I would say that he's actually going to head to New Orleans on Monday, and he's been under pressure to do that. So that will be watched. He'll be there. He'll be paying respects to the victims who were killed in that terrible terror attack on New Year's Day. So he's still around. But the problem is when you have things like the Trump sentencing and like the drama around Johnson, he takes second fiddle to all that now.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at a website here, an American website, which is basically saying that by going in so hard, by blaming Joe Biden for the New Orleans attack, Trump may be setting himself up for failure. Because, of course, if anything similar or even worse happens on his watch, people will turn around and happily and readily point the finger at him.
Yeah, I mean, Trump was so quick in blaming open borders when, in fact, the attacker was US born, a US citizen. So I guess whether or not it will backfire. I mean, Trump always makes these statements. He's known for his outrageous statements. He's been doing them for years, and they haven't backfired as yet. But what might backfire is his intelligence team, his security team. Are they the best team in place to deal with the multiple extremism threats that the US is facing right now? And that is a big, big question, because his pick for the head of the intelligence, for the head of the FBI, Kash Patel, he's talked about, greatly reducing the sizes of the intelligence community. When the US is facing some of its biggest threats, in such a long time, from so many different areas, from far-right extremism, from Islamist extremism, is this a time to be shrinking the intelligence and security services? So I think a greater threat comes from the actual policy enactments we might see from his security team, rather than anything he says on X or on his Truth Social platform.
Mm-hmm. And Charlotte, let's wrap up our little chat with a quick reflection from you on the front page of Saturday's Times, Starmer in Trump's sights. You're in DC, I think you're in Washington at the moment. What are you hearing about the real attitude of the incoming Trump administration towards Keir Starmer and his team?
From the incoming Trump administration, not so much. I think what everyone is paying attention to is Elon Musk, of course, who's very, very keen to have his views aired on British politics. I think it's notable that Trump has so far not jumped on the back of Musk's full throttle support.
Just a little comment about wind farms and stuff, and you're making
more the comments about more the support for the open support for Tommy Robinson and things. Well, so you did have Trump's comments on the wind farms, but if you're looking at the sort of more extreme end of things, he hasn't jumped on Musk's comments on that. But yeah, I think it's going to be a difficult relationship. But at the end of the day, it's a pragmatic one, isn't it? So I think it will be. We'll see.
Yeah, a great summary. Thank you very much to Charlotte McDonald Gibson, US correspondent for the Times.